fresh off the live show and ready to work. This is season 3, episode 9. And I'm here with the Network Connection, Critical Mass host, and my good buddy Dan Trax. His pick was 2004's romantic science fiction film, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet. But before we get into that, little housekeeping first. First, congrats to all the winners during the live show. If you missed it, don't worry. We still have a few drawings going on. Just go back, watch the recording on our YouTube or Facebook pages, and follow the instructions to enter. Winners will be notified. No purchase necessary, void or prohibited, etc., etc. Also, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and Letterboxd so you don't miss out on any future live shows or giveaways. Also, don't forget to check out Dan and Rocco over at Critical Mass Podcast. Find them on Facebook at Critical Mass Podcast 69 and Instagram at Critical Mass Podcast, or check the description for a link. This is a big blockbuster movie, guys, so there's a lot to unpack with this one. Just sit back and enjoy. As without further ado, on with the show. I get this candid stuff. I love this stuff, though. Recording is going. Man, I love just jumping right in. Do you guys do? I mean, I've been on your show a few times. You guys do a little bit of prep beforehand. Do you do that on repeat guests?
Now, when you say prep, can you be more specific?
I think you guys do kind of similar to what I do, which okay, pulling back the curtain a little bit on the podcast for the listeners. Yeah. I usually like to do a quick 5-minute prep. What to expect when you're a guest on the show, but I only do it on first time guests.
Yeah,
and
no,
I
don't
feel
need to do that for me. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like I remember you guys. Yeah, you guys did a little prep for me, like a quick 5 minutes. But
yeah, it depends on how Rocco feels. If he's trying to impress somebody, he'll do prep for them. Like for you, he definitely was going to. We used to do it for almost every single guest when we first started because we were worried about being sued, or at least he pretended to be worried about being sued. So we went over the whole you can say something about a wealthy person, but then they'd have to disprove you. No one's going to listen, dude. Let's just move on.
I love the drink, by the way. The watered down frou-frou drink. And you know what? I'm gonna give kudos where kudos are due. Congratulations to your Cowboys on an amazing win last night.
It's unreal, dude.
Now, obviously, listeners of the show.
Congratulations for Chris Collinsworth and what's his name? For honestly, after the first half was over, they continued to have to say something.
Right. You got to fill the void with something.
Lord. They were just honestly, because I recorded the second half because I said, I got sick.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, what is his name? Mike
Tomlin? No, that's the coach for the Steelers.
The host.
I don't remember.
Or maybe it was the other guy. He came down towards the last few minutes, and the clock began to run, and he was like, "Okay, the good news is the clock is running." He couldn't wait to get out of there. Chris Collinsworth.
The listeners who are probably picking this up in March, they already know that the Cowboys lost the Super Bowl, unfortunately, but at least you made it there. That's good.
Yeah, thank you. I love that prognostication.
So Dan, you answered the call. We had Rocco on. Rocco was adamant that you had secretly told him that you wanted to be on the show. We were excited to hear that because I'm assuming you knew season 3 is a hardcore season for the guests. We gave you guys the challenge that you're going to pick a movie that you hope will get into the top 10 at the end of the season when we did the YouTube video. And you picked 2004's romantic science fiction film, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey from Bruce Almighty and a Series of Unfortunate Events, Kate Winslet from The Life of David Gale and Finding Neverland, and I'm going to throw in Kristen Dunst, Mona Lisa Smiles in Spider-Man 2, and Mark Ruffalo, We Don't Live Here Anymore, and 13 Going on 30. Tell me why you picked the movie. What is your connection to it?
Well, when you announced that you were starting to record season 3, you said the guests on the show need to bring it this season. It's all about trying to get into that top 10. And so I said to myself, well, look, if I'm going to go on the show again, which I definitely want to, I'm going to bring the heat. and I had narrowed it down to 3 movies.
Ooh.
And I said, I gotta go for the jugular. If I'm going to get into the top 10 of this season, or maybe all time, was it all time for Gutsy Media?
Yeah, it's all time. Yeah.
Wow, the bar just got higher.
Can I ask
something?
What were the 3 movies?
Oh God. So it was going to be The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Oh,
Eternal Sunshine. And I forget what the third one was. We can look it up maybe later. But anyways, I just felt like Eternal Sunshine is one of my favorite movies, and it's truly unique.
I will give you that. It's a very unique movie, which obviously we will go into. Now, did you rewatch it for the cast?
Just today.
I love that because see, some of my guests don't rewatch the film. Listen, no pressure. Rewatch it. Don't rewatch it. It's your film. It's your episode. I prefer to rewatch it. I try to do it as close to the recording as possible. Usually within a week. And I actually watched this 2 days ago. I had seen it once before, many years ago, not when it first came out, but probably 2010, 2012, sometime in that time frame. And I remember thinking it was an okay movie. I will say this, I completely forgot the all-star cast that's in this movie. Heavily advertised Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, but we also got Elijah Wood, Mark Ruffalo, Kirsten Dunst, David Cross makes an appearance, Tom Wilkinson makes an appearance. It's a pretty big cast. Yeah,
it's a very good cast.
Now, did you see it when it first came out?
No, but I do remember seeing it just a few years after. And it's one of those movies that takes a few times before you really start to grasp it. I can remember feeling like when I watched it today that there's no way I completely grasped everything that was going on the first go around. There's just no way.
Yeah, it's a lot for sure. Yeah. Let's throw up the baseball card, if you will, with the stats. Released on March 19th, 2004. The movie has a runtime of 108 minutes, which is about an hour and 48 minutes, which perfect. Longtime listeners of the cast will know that I love a movie between an hour and a half and 2 hours. And this is almost dead nuts in the middle. So perfect time. Budget, $20 million. Box office. Care to take a guess?
Okay, spoiler alert. When I watched it today on Peacock, they gave you the Rotten Tomatoes score.
Right, which is an issue we have with Peacock. We have letters into the into customer service, but we'll see. We have some ways of going around that. So I think we're
all right. Good. But I am in the dark on what it did in box office. I would have to assume it did not make $20 million.
$74 million.
Oh,
this movie was a huge hit, 3 times its budget, which is by all means a success, especially for. I mean, I don't want to call it an indie film. It's a $20 million budget, but I would say not a blockbuster.
Well, Focus Features really did a whole ton of indie films, especially in the early to mid aughts. They were known for their indie films, so I think they had a name. So when you saw a preview with Focus Features as the headline shot, you knew you were getting something good.
Right.
I mean, at least that's how I felt in 2004. I was a college student,
right?
So that made a lot of sense to me.
No, but that brings up a good point. So, we have blockbusters, which I would assume describe most, your Marvel movies. These are huge budget movies projected to get, $1 billion. Then you have indie films, which are relatively low budget, typically no name actors. What do you call the stuff in between?
Right. I would call it like movies? A big indie film.
A big indie film?
Yeah, I think more and more you're seeing these actors and actresses taking on roles that are not blockbuster films in smaller screens, etc., and they tend to do well. I mean, if you can pull in a cast like that,
yeah,
you better do well.
Yeah, for sure. And like you mentioned, Focus Features, they were the distributor of the film, produced by Anonymous Content, and This Is That, directed by Michael Gondry. He did Be Kind, Rewind, which I love. Yes, and he did The Green Hornet. Outside of those 2 movies, he basically directed music videos.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, lots of music videos, like a ton of music videos. He teams up with Piri Bismuth, which I'm totally probably pronouncing wrong, to be writers on this film. They get the idea from a 1998 conversation they had about what would happen if memory could get erased. Would you erase somebody? So they come up with the idea for the film. They get the title of the film from a 17th century poem. Then Memento comes out, and they get a little fear because they are afraid they're going to be compared to another memory film. So they kind of rewrite the script, and they say that
time out. These are the nuggets that people tune in for. Okay,
I appreciate it.
Mark this down and put this in your next ad. Okay, these are the nuggets people want to hear.
I am full of nuggets, my friend.
Keep going.
So they rewrite the script, and they decide they're going to focus more on the relationship than the science. And they're going to hope that differentiates them. Tagline for the film: I already forgot how I used to feel about you. It is rated R for language, some drug, and sexual content. This movie comes out. It does huge. Opening weekend's pretty good. It's a limited release. So it's huge release in perspective with the number of theaters it had. It goes on to win Best Original Screenplay at the Academy Awards. Kate Winslet also gets nominated for Best Actress. Golden Globes, they get a nomination for Best Motion Picture. They get a nomination for Best Screenplay. They get a nomination for Best Actor and Actress. Here's my issue, though. All those nominations come in the category of musical or comedy, which this movie, in my opinion, does not fit in either one of those categories.
I think it's hard to categorize the movie at all, especially when you were doing it at the beginning of the episode. But you did mention did you say romance or romantic comedy?
Romantic science fiction film is what it's listed as on the internet,
which is just so odd. But I think I would agree that it's less about the science fiction and more about the romance. It's about this connection that these two have. So we call it a comedy,
right? We could agree it's not a musical or comedy,
right?
Ridiculous.
Certainly not a musical.
They should give back.
Although the score that was underlying, at least through the third act of the film, I think it was beautiful. But still, it's not a musical whatsoever. Maybe they just it could have been one of those years where they just were like, okay, this movie has to get credit, but we also got to give the Brad Pitt movie credit too.
Right. They paid for it, so we have to give it to them. So let's move them to a musical and comedy. And they were like, yeah, it sounds great.
Sure.
So let's get right into it. I mean, the movie starts off in a kind of an odd way. We got Jim Carrey waking up, goes out to his car. You know, he does some I don't even remember, running around. He ends up bumping into Kate Winslet at the subway. They kind of hit it off. They got kind of this flirtatious feel going on. I will say this, though, right off the bat, Kate Winslet is a crazy person.
Yeah.
If you meet her on the subway, I'm not talking to her. She's insane.
Yeah.
Are you?
I think we've all met people like that character, though.
Oh, for sure. I married one. It was great.
Well, there you have it. I actually dated someone very similar to that. So I really connected to Jim's character, where he was just sort of trying to deal with her at first. You know?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think of Jim's character? He plays kind of an introvert here, little shy.
Yeah, loved it. Look, cards on the table here, folks. This is an emo film. This is a melancholy, like soak in the sadness type of film.
Well said.
I think if you're a certain type of person, you're just not going to like it, which is fine. But for me, and certainly the history that I've had with my relationships, it struck a chord. Jim's character I really liked. I mean, there's part of him that wanted me to, or part of me that wanted him to just break out of that introverted shell a little bit more, stop being so much of a pussy, if you will. I know this was a PG podcast. Now it's PG-13.
Yeah, you totally just ruined everything.
But I think that makes you connect more. It makes you get in, because then it makes you connect more with Kate Winslet's character, where it's like she wants to push him, like, come on, stop saying nice all the time. Why are you being nice? I'm not nice. Don't be nice.
Here's what I will say. I do agree with you that I think his character being an introvert and her character being so much of an extrovert and kind of a loud character does kind of play into why the relationship seems so passionate. I mean, it's a pretty crazy relationship, and we get to see it kind of in reverse, and we'll get into that in a little while. But I guess what I'm seeing these two connect on the subway, you get the sense that they kind of go from strangers to friends very quickly. By the end of their little flirtation session, they wind up going back to her place. Right. I mean, like there's a whole chain of events where I believe they go somewhere else first, but at the end of the day, they wind up back at her place so she can pick up some stuff because they're going to go to Jim's place for the night.
Right.
And she goes inside to get some stuff, and he's kind of out in the car, and you get this sense that he's kind of like, holy shit, like this is awesome. This girl seems crazy. Like, what am I doing? Like, this is nuts.
Right.
And then Elijah Wood's character walks up. His name's Patrick, and he comes over and he taps on the window, and he's kind of like, what are you doing here? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm putting myself in Jim Carrey's position, which is I think why they kind of show this interaction in the beginning of the film, because you have no idea who he is. You really have no idea who Jim Carrey is or Kate Winslet's character is. You just know these are kind of three strangers, and this random guy comes up and is like, what are you doing here? And he answers kind of how you think, well, how I think I would, which is like, what do you mean? I'm parked here waiting for somebody. And Elijah Wood kind of like accepts the answer and walks off. I am so confused by this movie at this point.
Yeah.
Do you remember watching it for the first time, not knowing like the reveals? Like, how did you feel?
If I could make an educated guess, I would assume that when I watched it, I knew that I was in for a ride.
Right.
And so when something like that happens, you typically say, I'm going to put a pin in that.
Right.
That'll be explained later. You know, this is not a typical movie where things happen and they're explained well. So.
Here's my other issue is I think a lot of times, you know, when you walk into a movie, whether it's opening night or even later on, even worse when it's later on, you kind of have a good idea of what the plot already is. I mean, yeah, you might have some of these like mystery movies where you get thrown for a loop or something, but
yeah,
you got to assume this movie's about memory erasing. So I'm kind of already getting the idea that, oh, maybe Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet's character knew each other at some point. Maybe there is some sort of memory erasing here. Now, I will tell you what threw me for a loop, even with that kind of in the back of my head, was about 18 minutes into the film, we get the opening credits.
Yes, I noticed that. I find that that's not something that's typically done, especially back then. But nowadays, I find it happening more and more in TV.
Right.
In streaming service television shows, you find that there's like this huge delay until the opening credits. And at first I was caught off guard by that watching it again. I was like, oh, wow, you're right. All of a sudden there's opening credits. But then it's sort of interesting why they chose that minute marker, because
I loved it. Okay, so why do you think?
Well, because obviously that first opening section was not, in fact, the opening section. It was the end of the movie.
Right. Now, I will say
back.
I didn't go to the point where I thought it was the end, but I did think, okay, if I'm getting the opening credits, this is the beginning. I am watching what I just watched was not the beginning. Maybe it's the middle, probably the end, but this is the beginning. And it kind of is. Yeah. The beginning of the film, if you will, or at the 18-minute mark, Jim Carrey is going through a very rough breakup, it seems. Him and
his car. I mean, yeah, it's what I did to come here.
So, I heard you outside. You could have just came in
weeping.
Yeah, he's very upset. He's clearly distraught. He makes comments and actually goes to a friend's house, which is played by David Cross, and talks about how him and Kate Winslet's character, her name is Clementine, how him and Clementine got into a fight, and he's just gonna make up with her, and yada yada yada. And that's when his friend says, "I gotta tell him," because the friend's girlfriend's there too. So he's kind of talking to the girlfriend. I gotta tell him what we just got. And he pulls out this card that basically says Clementine has had Jim Carrey's character, Joel erased from her memory.
Yeah. Now, which explains he had just gone to the library or the Barnes and Nobles where she worked.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I forgot about that scene.
Yeah. Here's my gift that I want to give you to make up.
Right.
She didn't know who she was. Now he's completely distraught, sees this guy that she's kissing,
which is Elijah Wood.
goes back to his friend's house and says, "What the fuck is going on? I don't understand." So that's where you begin to see, okay, she did it first.
Right.
That's why Jim's confused.
Right. So she has no idea who Jim is when Jim comes to visit her. And we also get the take of who Elijah Wood is. So we see Elijah Wood. Elijah Wood at this point is kind of just her new boyfriend, I guess, the guy she's moved on with. So you get the idea of why he would be at her place, why he would show up at her place, but now I'm confused. I'm like, was that in the past? Was that in the future? Is Elijah Wood, if it was in the future, then he must get his memory erased too, which is kind of what happens. He goes to the place on the card, gets the whole details about what happened with her, how she got her memory erased. The doctor there, played by Tom Wilkinson, basically, I can't really tell you everything, client, doctor privilege, but I can tell you she underwent this procedure that essentially erases you from her memory. And we do this as a service that we provide, yada, yada, yada. So Jim Carrey's character kind of says, you're going to do it. I'm going to do it too. Screw you. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And at this point, the movie actually relatively seems straightforward,
Yeah.
What do you like? Let me ask you this question. You get the card from a girlfriend you recently broke up with. Are you hurt? Are you upset? Do you understand? Are you doing it too?
Oh, that's a good question. Would I do the same thing that Joel did? No, I don't think that I would, because of what he went through. As the story unfolds, he realizes that when you erase all the bad memories, you're erasing the good ones too.
Right.
And that goes back to the quote of the movie that I think may be misusing the quote. I think the quote is more about, ignorance is bliss to a certain extent. But in this case, I think the movie was trying to bend the quote to mean, you can't have the good without the bad. And you think everything's fine and dandy without pain, but it isn't. So I think that was a beautiful message. And yeah, I as Joel, I would have to hesitate before I did that. I mean, there were so many good times, God damn it, Bob. Now I'm really going back into the feels here. There are people in my past that I do kind of wish I could just erase.
Yeah.
But, it's hard. It's really hard because then you dive into the whole, do you regret things in your life? And then you're supposed to say no, that you don't regret things because they taught you things. But
that is the most ridiculous argument I've ever heard in my life.
Okay,
of course you regret things. If you could replay your life knowing what you know now, you wouldn't change anything? I mean, it's kind of the same question, right?
Day. I don't know. Because
of course you would.
But the timeline changes.
Okay, listen.
Land where you were.
Yeah, and then Loki pops out with variants. Like, I mean, I get it.
Exactly.
I get the repercussions, but I mean, still though, how could you not? How could you not?
I know.
If a wizard came down and said, I can do it, I can put you back at 18 with the memory you have now.
Oh my God.
Right?
If I knew now. I knew then what I knew now. Yeah, yikes.
I will say this though. So we're talking about differences in timelines. Let's talk about what this movie would be if the original actors they wanted got selected. For example, Nick Cage was the original choice to play Joel, but Cage was unavailable as he was in high demand from independent directors after his performance in Leaving Las Vegas. I could kind of see Cage. I could see Cage in this role, especially a younger Cage before he became like really the meme he is now.
Yeah,
I could see that.
Hard.
What about Seth Rogen auditioning for the role of Patrick, played by Elijah Wood?
That's fine. That actually makes sense to me.
I'm not a Seth Rogen fan. I don't think he's a good actor. I definitely don't think he's a good dramatic actor.
Probably not a good dramatic actor. You're probably right about that. I just like the guy personally. And I can see him playing a bit of a creep, the whole stealing her panties thing, being good at tech, being a bit of a loner, even a psycho standing outside her door waiting for her. But you're right. As far as the dramatic stuff goes, I don't think he's there.
What about Denzel Washington, who turned down the role of Joel?
What?
Yeah. No. Listen, Denzel Washington's a phenomenal actor, and do I think he could play this role? For sure, but it's a different movie then, and it's not a different. I'm not feeling it.
Yeah, no way.
I will say this though. So some comments on Kate Winslet playing Clementine. Obviously not her typical role. She's typically at this point in her career playing like timepieces. Obviously most well known for Titanic. Like I said, she just came off Life with David Gale. Have you seen that movie?
No.
Great movie. And then after this, she's doing Finding Neverland. So she receives the role after she was the only actress to offer criticism on the script instead of pandering to the writers. After another actor won an Oscar, the studio attempted to make the director use her instead of Winslet up for the role of Clementine, but the director threatened to walk off the project if that occurred. During filming, the director took Winslet to a separate room to coach her, and she wore wigs instead of dyeing her hair. Some commentators noted how Clementine's character criticizes the manic pixie dream girl stock character several years before the film critics coined the phrase. Most commentators discuss one particular example of demonstrating this criticism, wherein Clementine warns Joel she is flawed. Quote, "Too many guys think I'm a concept, or I complete them, or I'm going to make them alive. But I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for her own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours." End quote. I love that line.
Yeah.
Such great writing right there.
It's the nail on the head, too.
100%.
I think that encapsulates so many women of my past and
not just that,
guys. But
Rocco. No, it's a direct attack to the movie trope, the wild girl who dyes her hair and lives life to the fullest. Yeah. And then you got this square guy who finds her and, she teaches him how to live. And they wrote Kate Winslet's character, Clementine, as a direct attack to that. Listen, I'm wild and crazy because I'm fucking crazy and I'm trying to get my shit together and I'm not here to bail you out of your boring life. And I love that line. I love that.
Yeah, well said. Didn't Joel allude to that being a great line of hers? Because he finishes the quote in his own memory. Right.
Yeah.
He says he alludes to it being really great.
Yeah, he says, I remember when you said that.
Yeah. Which is great.
Yeah, I mean, so this is really where the movie kind of takes off. The procedure that Joel is going to get is going to happen in his house. So he's got to go home. He's got to scrounge together all of the stuff that reminds him of Clementine, bring it in, and they're going to use that to map his brain. Then they're going to come in the middle of the night while he's sleeping and erase her so that when he wakes up, it's like she never existed. Now, as soon as they say when he wakes up, it's like she never existed, I immediately flash back to the beginning of the movie. Right. And I'm like, got it. So that's what happens. So now at this point, I'm thinking, I've already seen the ending. I know the beginning because of the opening credits. Mm-hmm. The middle is just them erasing her. That's it. Right. It's the whole movie. There's let me check my watch. There's an hour of movie left. What is gonna possibly happen in this film?
But what you think is the ending is not the whole ending.
Right. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about that as well. So this is when the proverbial shit hits the fan. Mark Ruffalo comes over in the middle of the night. Jim Carrey takes a pill. You see him kind of stumble, within seconds of taking the pill, he's kind of stumbling through his kitchen and kind of presumably passes out. Mark Ruffalo shows up with Elijah Wood. They are the techs from this company. The company's name is Lucina. I'm probably not pronouncing that right.
Lucana. I say it with a hard C.
Yeah, good call. Yeah. It's Latin for cavity or hollow.
Huh.
All right. So they're the two techs. They show up, and right off the bat, I'm kind of piecing together Elijah Wood now. And him and Mark Ruffalo have a whole bunch of conversations, but it's basically a way of providing the audience with some more information, which is the idea that these two, I'll call them idiots, these two morons, were the team that erased Clementine's memory, during which time Elijah Wood becomes infatuated with her. And listen, I am using the word infatuation very loosely. What he becomes with her is creepy, beyond creepy. Full on Donald Trump mode. He tells
like steal dossier type stuff.
Right. He tells Ruffalo that while at her house erasing her memory, he steals some of her panties, and then to take it one step further, plans kind of this like bump in to her and basically tries to date her, does date her, like winds up seeing her a few times. They hit it off. And even crazier, now that Joel has come into the company to get his memory erased and brought all of his stuff in, he's now using some of Joel's stuff to woo Clementine, because you got to figure he already knows this works.
Yeah. So to be specific, Joel's character has a diary and writes a lot of stuff in his journal, illustrates things, and all of that evidence was literally brought to the company.
Right.
So now Elijah Wood's character has access to all of these things, these intimate details between Joel and Clementine.
Right.
So he can use those to his advantage.
So now we get the idea of why Elijah Wood shows up in the beginning of the film and is so freaked out of why Joel is there, because you got to assume both these characters had their memory erased.
Right.
So why are they together again?
Right.
But so Clementine calls Elijah Wood, and Elijah Wood leaves and is more or less out of the movie for pretty much the remainder. Well, actually, we'll get into what happens to him, and he goes to see Clementine and all that stuff. But before he leaves, Kirsten Dunst's character shows up. She's the secretary at this company, so she's obviously worked with Mark Ruffalo. They've kind of hit it off. You don't really know the relationship between them, but clearly they're going to be in Joel's house by themselves. And she's not there as a tech. She's there to just hang out with him. They end up starting to drink, and they're having a good time, and they're partying. They get down to their little skivvies, and you got to assume that they're, probably banging it out over Joel's lifeless body, which is, again, kind of creepy.
Bizarre.
So, hey, come take a seat at the campfire. You're not the only one who joins. I've got friends that come over sometimes, too. We talk about a ton of interesting things from geek culture. Then we cover some conspiracies or philosophical thoughts or monsters, We talked about Bigfoot in one episode. It's a lot of fun, so come join me at the Campfire Chats, a DFAT entertainment podcast hosted on Spotify and other fine places you find podcasts.
What you don't realize is that it ain't easy. It is hard goddamn work making something this pretty look like a G. So I must be doing it for a reason.
It's you. It's always been you.
And it's worth fighting.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
Join me. Gutsy Media Podcast. Because movies are our life.
So
yeah, there's things like that give me anxiety, that bother me. It's just kind of like, why would you be so stupid and careless? These two characters are so fucking dumb, and it makes you think, like, does this kind of thing happen all the time? How
for sure, with like surgeries and stuff.
Well, I just mean out of those characters and this pretend world that we're living in. Like, do they do that for every patient?
So this is great, because I want to read off a few of the notes I made. Because I said that she drinks a lot. Clementine seems to be drinking a lot. The ending is very predictable. I wrote that halfway through my notes, and then I have another page and a half of notes because it's clearly not. I said it bothers me that the techs aren't taking this seriously. They're acting like children while trying to play with somebody's brain, which is 100% true. They're literally dancing in their underwear over Joel's body as this procedure is happening. And Mark Ruffalo makes a comment kind of in passing that he's got the computer on autopilot, which the computer is essentially going into his brain and zapping these memories. Now, I'm not sure if the techs know this or not, but what's happening in Joel's brain is he's reliving these memories as they're being erased. So if you can imagine a horrible relationship lived backwards, he's got all these fights in the beginning, and the fights slowly fade and go into these magical moments that you have with a boyfriend or girlfriend or significant other. They've been dating for 2 years. You have 2 years of memories that it's erasing. Could you imagine living your last major relationship prior to your wife in reverse?
Yeah, it's just a in my mind, a beautiful concept. It was beautifully done. They do a lot of camera tricks in it as well. Sort of unique in that sense. But the concept alone of just is essentially having a lucid dream where you wake up in the middle of the dream and realize what's going on and begin to have control.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very well said.
He begins to realize what's happening. He gains control of the situation, not easily. And then beautifully, I think Clementine starts to be on his side and is also aware of what's happening. So almost in every scene that he's aware of it, he has to remind her of what's happening.
Right.
And then it gets to the point where she's actually egging him on. She's like, no, you've got to go somewhere dark, or you got to go somewhere sad. You got to, somewhere embarrassing that can't be found.
Yeah. So she's kind of like his subconscious almost, or like a construct, I guess. But yeah, I mean, they're erasing the memories that she exists in. So her thought process is, take me to a memory that is, so far away from a memory of me, and kind of hide me there. And they do that in kind of a great and weird way. They go to a memory from his childhood, and she's there. I could take it or leave it, but what's weird is the movie is splitting its time between the destruction of these memories and the slow unravel of Joel's want to get rid of Clementine. Because as he's reliving these memories and realizing some of the good that came with it and some of these things that he's going to lose, he starts kind of talking out loud and saying he doesn't want to do it anymore. He's changed his mind. He wants him to stop. And my immediate thought was, I don't know if you've ever, watched any of these documentaries on like the people that commit suicide off the bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a great documentary. I forgot the name of it. But I think it starts off in the preview with a guy who survived, and he's like, there's been 22 people since, 2000, and I'm making up numbers, that have survived a suicide attempt off the Golden Gate Bridge. And every single one of them will tell you that their first thought after leaving the railing is, I don't want to do this anymore. I've changed my mind.
Wow.
And that was my first flash when he says this, when he says, I've changed my mind. I give up. Because at this point, how anxiety ridden, even just watching it, I got such great anxiety that he's trapped, reliving these amazing memories, knowing that they're being wiped from his brain and there's nothing he can do to stop it because he's essentially comatose.
Right. He was on the ice screaming.
Yeah.
The screaming, asking for it to stop, the fights that they got into, all these, there were See, I've always thought Jim Carrey was actually a very good dramatic actor. Some comedians can really pull off a dramatic scene. Robin Williams was maybe the best for a comic to become dramatic actor.
I agree.
Jim Carrey, in my mind, has a lot of these little nuances and things about his face that he does that I'm biased because I grew up loving Jim Carrey, but I can admit when a lot of great comics I see on the screen just don't pull it off. And for me, he does. And that's a great example there. He's on the ice. He realizes, please, just stop.
I will say this.
Heartbreaking.
I give him a lot of credit for doing the more dramatic roles, especially as his career's gone on. Because he had it made in his Jim Carrey was a legend when it came to comedy. He is a legend when it comes to comedy roles. So I give him a lot of credit for trying other genres. I will say that I don't think it's always a home run. Number 23 was a pretty decent movie. I think the writing could have been better, but it wasn't his acting. I think in this movie, he does a good job, but I also don't think he's in the spotlight the entire movie. I think there's such a large supporting cast and so many layers to the story of this film that I think that's good for him. Not to have the whole movie riding on him.
Burden that weight.
Yeah. Right. So while this is happening and he's trying to move Clementine around in his memories, the computer is having a hard time, obviously, finding the memory now and erasing it. So the computer starts spitting out error messages, to which Mark Ruffalo's character gets a little freaked out. And once he realizes that he really can't do much to fix it, he calls the doctor. Again, played by Tom Wilkinson. who says, okay, you know, I'll be right over and we'll fix this. Now he's got to do a mad dash to kind of clean up the house because he's an idiot and has beer all over the place. And, you know, he has to explain why Elijah Wood isn't there, which let's flash back to that. So he goes over to Clementine, who's having a mild crisis, tries to calm her down. They end up, you know, running off together to the same frozen lake that she had brought Joel to which Patrick, Elijah Wood, tries to spit out a Joelism, if you will.
Right.
And this causes her to kind of freak out. She kind of loses it on him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is an integral scene. He literally mimics,
right,
line for line, word for word, what Joel's character said about this being the happiest moment of his life, etc. This awakens something in her subconscious.
Right.
Remember, she's erased him already, and now, if we're to assume that Joel and Clementine are, you know, soulmates or meant for each other or have some cosmic bond, that's not something that you can simply erase. That's kind of the point of the movie. So when he says that exact line, it awakens something in her. She sits right up, like as stiff as a board, and says, "I have to go," and books it. It's a very important scene because it's when her character realizes, I'm done with this fucking dude.
Right.
Something else is going on. I've got to figure it out.
I think Kate Winslet does a phenomenal job, not just in this scene, but in the movie. Again, her character, her and Jim Carrey's character are put up in a lot of the advertising and in the previews as like the main characters in the movie. And I understand the argument. I agree that I think that they're the main characters. But when you talk about main characters, typically main characters are going to get, you know, 80 to 90% of the screen time and the main points of the plot. I would say that they only have about half a movie worth of plot, and they have maybe 40 to 50% of the screen time. So while they are the main characters, I'm getting sidetracked. My point is I think Kate Winslet does a great job in this scene of expressing panic. Mm. You get this sense that she is having severe deja vu. Like she doesn't remember Joel, but she is freaked out by how weird this scene is for her, you know, how it feels for her. So she freaks out and she leaves.
Yeah.
So Mark Ruffalo's character, Stan is his name. He's got to explain to the doctor why Elijah Wood isn't there. And you also get the sense that Kristen Dunst's character, her name's Mary, she kind of flirts with the doctor. She's very complimentary of him and almost right in front of Stan. So it's a little weird. You kind of feel uncomfortable. And then unexpectedly, Stan decides, okay, well, it looks like the doctor's got this. I'm going to leave, which threw me for a little bit of a loop. Well, he says he's going to go outside and clear his head. He's going to go for a walk or he's got his jacket on. Yeah. So he's not going to leave, but you get the sense that he's not going to be back immediately. To which Mary and the doctor are left alone, and Mary starts really hitting on the doctor and then gets up and walks over and tries to kiss him. And then the doctor's wife shows up outside where Stan is standing, and Stan proceeds to kind of, did you get the sense that Stan called the wife?
No,
really?
I did not. No. I think, you know, the wife knows about the history between the two that you're about to bring up.
Right.
And furthermore, you see the wife when the doctor receives the phone call that Stan's fucked up and needs help. The wife the way that she looks at her husband was in a very knowing way. Like,
right.
Here we go again.
Right.
So I feel like she had her suspicions anyways.
Okay. I kind of got the sense that Stan might, you know, kind of feel for Mary, feels like the doctor's in the way, thinks I can do an anonymous phone call, but either are very plausible. They don't explain either one. All that we know is that the doctor's wife sees the doctor and Mary making out in the window, freaks out, obviously, and kind of hints that this is not the first time that this has happened, and drives off. We then get the big reveal. Mary and the doctor have had an affair before, and Mary had her memory erased to forget the doctor. Mm-hmm. the doctor more or less explains this to her and then kind of says, I've got to, attend to this guy, Joel. And Mary leaves. She's upset and she leaves. The doctor fixes Joel, gets all the memories, and they pack up their stuff and they leave as well. So we then get Joel waking up, going on the subway, meeting Clementine, and the rest of that kind of opening happening. So now you understand why Elijah Wood shows up, why he's a little freaked out. But then it continues. Now, here's what I have in my notes. I have at that point, let me get to it. I said the beginning equals the end. And then in parentheses, I said it should have ended here. Okay.
Huh.
So
you mean at the point where Elijah is confronting Joel?
At the not even that far. At the point where Joel wakes up. We get the same scene in the beginning as the end, and you could essentially watch the movie in a loop. And it should have ended. Now, I will say this. I wrote that before watching the rest of it.
Okay.
So at that point, I'm thinking it's like Inception. You can rewatch the movie. It's on this loop. It should have ended.
Yeah.
All the memories are released is my next note. Mary goes to the doctor's office in the night to find her file. She finds it, gets all the information. And I want to come back to this point too later with some additional facts I have for you. And then decides to steal everybody else's files and mail the files to the people.
So that's what was happening. I was very confused if those were all her files because they've happened to her so many times, or what, or they're just a handful of people's.
Well, there's a throwaway line earlier in the film where Joel has brought all of Clementine's stuff to the office and Mary's behind the counter and she's taking phone calls. And she makes a comment to somebody on the phone, basically apologizing, saying that they have a limit of 3 times per person and that they couldn't. So it's a throwaway line that only happens once, but you kind of get this idea. There's a cap as to how many times that we can erase somebody's memory. But regardless, she steals the file. She mails the files out to all the people or puts them in the mailboxes or whatever. Clementine, who's inside getting her stuff while Joel's waiting in the car, gets her file. Now, I wrote on here, she's reading the file to Joel in the car, and they actually listen to a tape, the recording that Clementine makes about basically why she wants to erase Joel. So it's nothing but how awful Joel is and how he's boring and I'm tired of him and blah, 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 blah. Now, I want to kind of fast forward real quick. Joel goes home and he gets his file as well and listens to his tape. And Clementine actually makes him like play it out loud so they can both hear it because it says equally as bad stuff about her.
Yeah.
My question to you.
It's only fair.
My question to you. You meet a stranger, very intriguing. You're instantly attracted to her. You guys hit it off and you find out that this is an ex of yours that you had a long relationship with, but you ultimately erased from your memory. Now you have no memory of this, no memory of any of the bad times, but you know what happened.
Right.
Do you do it again?
I think so. I think if I'm in Joel's shoes and clearly there's some sort of connection there that they can't shake.
Right.
Then yeah.
Because that's what it is, right? That's the existential question the movie's leaving you with. Is if you knew that the relationship was going to end badly, or rather did end badly,
I thought you were going to ask, would you continue to play the cassette tape out loud? That's basically you trashing the other person.
I would. Hey, listen, let's get the cards on the table. Let's figure out exactly what happened the first time.
Yeah.
So I wrote here, would you do it again? In parentheses, should have ended there. But the movie continues even more. And they said they answer that question for you because they wind up giving it another shot.
Yeah.
I think they should have left it open-ended.
Okay, fair enough. I think there's lots of examples of great movies that leave things open-ended. And I'm not one of those people that needs it to be either or.
Okay.
I never watched The Sopranos, but for some reason I watched the final scene. And I like the way they ended The Sopranos. It's fine. It's fine by me. Maybe because I didn't have any connection to the characters. There's plenty of examples in Hollywood and TV where things are sort of left open-ended.
Do you have a preference?
Okay. I don't really. I think it really depends on each situation. In this situation, I liked what I saw. I think I would have been a little more bothered, but slightly bothered if they had left it more open-ended. Mm-hmm. Maybe because of my past and my past relationships, I sort of needed an answer from Joel. And I liked that they both saw, okay, there's going to be a lot of problems.
Right.
I'm going to find you boring, and I'm going to feel trapped, and I'm going to want out. And you're going to find me annoying and psychotic. And Jim just goes, okay. Because he's willing to live with it. He's willing to live with the bad in order to keep the good.
I get that. I get that like you had mentioned earlier, this is a kind of a dark, emotional movie. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's a very very optimistic movie, because you have these two people that, like you said, they know it's going to be an uphill battle. And they say, listen, love just conquers all. Let's just do it. And we're meant for each other. And we came back together after our memories got erased. But let's be realistic. Mm. Every fight they have, you're gonna throw out, I knew you were boring. It's kind of like saying you're just like your mother. It's gonna be one of those little you could just gouge that. And then you got to think, every fight they have, when the person storms out, is this it? Is this where the relationship ends? If she kicks him out or he kicks her out, is this it? Am I going to get my memory right? Like, it's going to be constantly on the back of your head. It's not going to work.
See, the thing is, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I know.
But that's what makes it so beautiful, is that they can't help that.
They can't help it.
Wrong too. They know it's wrong too.
The galaxy's just bringing them together. Here's what I do want to talk about, though. Let's talk about some of the changes from the original script, which I think would have made the movie a little bit better. In the script, Kirsten Dunst's character has an unplanned pregnancy as well, that the doctor talks her into getting rid of before erasing her memory, which I think that would have added another layer to that relationship and kind of increased her anger, I think, which they should have left in my opinion.
I wonder what their motivation was to take it out. I mean, I think it would have fit perfectly.
Yeah, probably just cutting down the runtime, I would imagine. A lot of times you get, an initial script that has so many subplots and these threads, and that's why you get these 3-4 hour movies that, you got to trim down to an hour and a half. You're going to remove complete subplots, which I think that was one of them.
Yeah.
The original script featured a cut beginning and end sequences that took place in the future. In the end, an older Clementine comes in to have the procedure done, and a look at her screen shows that she's had the procedure done multiple times, and all of them involve Joel. At the end of the script, the older Joel calls Clementine to ask why she hasn't called, but the technician performing the procedure erases his message.
Damn.
I knew it. Also, are you familiar? I called it. Well, probably because I read that already. But Are you familiar with who Ellen Pompey is? Pompeo? She's the blind girl from Red Dragon. Are you familiar with that movie? I'm trying to think.
I know Red Dragon. Isn't that the one where? Oh, fuck, what was he saying? There's a quote my friends say all the time.
There's only like one other movie she's been in, and I forgot what it was. But anyway, she was supposed to play Naomi, which is Joel's girlfriend before Clementine. She actually had some scenes in the script and was cast, but her scenes were ultimately cut. Also, Tracy Morgan was in the film, but was ultimately cut. Nothing about what role he played or how he contributed to the script, but ultimately he was cut. Yeah. One other little tidbit: Clementine's hair colors can be used to help the viewer keep track of where they are in the timeline.
Yeah, I noticed that actually recently. That her hair color has a very specific use.
Yeah, I got to go back and rewatch it now because I didn't know that until after, and I'm curious.
She has green, blue, and orange reddish. And she's blue in what is considered the beginning of the movie, but really sort of the present day,
right?
Present tense. And I think, God, what was it? Green for a minute. I'd have to watch it again. But yeah, that makes sense to me.
So, Dan, you were on previous seasons. As you may or may not know, our crack team of scientists are constantly trying to revise our questions just to make sure that we're asking the most important ones to determine whether or not this is a good movie. So
I
here
read
we
that in
are.
Scientific American.
Exactly. We had a huge one-page article in that, so I appreciate you reading that.
Tiny font.
So without further ado, let's tackle the 3 questions.
Right.
So question number 1, does the progress and rhythm of the movie fit?
Wow, that's a tough one because progress and rhythm are something that doesn't necessarily fit with a lot of typical movies. And this one, I would venture to say yes. I'm leaning towards yes because it does progress, just not in the way that you might think. And it does have rhythm, just not in the way that you might think. It's, in that sense, a jazz rhythm.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the key to this question is does it fit? And it does fit the movie. I honestly, I think the movie told in a more linear, kind of clearer way isn't going to be as successful. Part of what makes this movie good is this kind of thrown together feel almost, it's kind of told out of order. Even his memories with Clementine are told backwards. And I like that. It kind of gives you this uneasy, like even though you understand why they're doing it, you just don't feel good about any point of this.
I think the point is that you're taking the perspective of Joel. And he wakes up not knowing anything, just like the viewer doesn't know anything.
Right.
And you have to figure it out as he does.
Yeah,
So
I mean, going back to those comments about
process.
Right, where you ran into Patrick, you're like, you don't know Patrick either. So you're like, why is this guy here?
Why the fuck
and
are you bothering me?
Right.
Why is there a giant dent in the side of my car?
Oh, we didn't even
going
talk
on?
about that.
Yeah.
That's a whole great. So you find out they broke up because Clementine got into a little fender bender while drinking.
Yeah.
But when the movie starts off, like I said, Joel wakes up and he goes out to his car. He sees this giant dent in the side of his car, and then the car next to him, he assumes that's, the car next to him was going to hit him. So he leaves a note on the car that says, "Thank you," like kind of an FU.
Yeah.
Could you imagine being that owner? You come out and you're like, what? Somebody thanking me for something. I don't know.
And typical Joel's character is not to write "fuck you,"
right,
or "how dare you."
Very passive aggressive.
This passive aggressive. Thanks.
I love it. Jim Carrey, he did not have a great experience filming this movie. And actually, I probably shouldn't say it like that. It was a very weird experience. So the director, knowing Jim Carrey is this outlandish kind of crazy guy, refused to let him improvise anything. He was not allowed to improvise any lines. Meanwhile, the rest of the cast was allowed to improvise. Jim Carrey was often frustrated while filming, said the director would contradict what he was saying to the other cast members. The director explained that he had to take Kate Winslet to a different room and tell her, go as big as you want. This is a comedy movie. But then he would come back and tell Jim, it's a drama, not a comedy. Stick to the script.
Wow.
Which I love.
That
also,
takes balls to be able to handle those two huge people like that. And,
for sure. And you can see Jim Carrey definitely feels kind of tampered down in this film.
Yeah.
I will say in 2017 Netflix documentary, Jim and Andy, Jim Carrey mentions a conversation that he had with the director 1 year before shooting the film. Shortly after Carrey had broken up with an unspecified woman, the director saw that Carrey's emotional state at the time was so, quote, beautiful and broken that he asked Jim to stay that way for 1 year to fit the character.
Jesus.
In the documentary, Carrey comments, that's how fucked up this business is.
I don't remember that part. It was a great documentary.
I gotta watch it. I haven't seen it.
Oh, you haven't? Oh,
I know that when he plays Andy Kaufman, that's kind of like his descent into the Jim Carrey we know now.
Yeah. Yeah. But wow, I didn't hear that. I don't remember that part. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. God damn. This director, what was the director's name again?
Michael Gondry?
Yeah,
I think it's pronounced Gondry. Gondry.
To be able to reel him in like that. I mean, knowing Jim Carrey and how big of a personality he was.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay, so question number 2. What, if any, part of the film speaks to you and why?
Oy vey. There's so many parts. I mean, obviously the end, where they pretty much say to each other, like, it's okay, let's do this anyways. But there was a part I think that spoke to me the most. The final memory that is being erased, which is really where they met at a picnic on Montauk with friends and family. They meet each other there. Did you notice the whole My Darling Clementine part?
Yes.
Where he did know what it was, but then after his memory's erased, he didn't.
Which is great. Like they even erased a song reference with just the word Clementine in it.
Yeah. And as they're going through this house that night, trying to find some wine to drink, trying to chill out, hang out, and nervous Joel is just like, we shouldn't be here. And then he leaves, and they're describing, because they both remember him leaving, and he says something to the effect of, yeah, and I just walked out. And she goes, well, I wish you hadn't. And he goes, I know, me too. And the weird thing about that is it wouldn't have changed anything in their relationship. They still ended up together, right? But again, this is back to that melancholy emo stuff that for some reason speaks to me sometimes, where it's just like the antisocial regret. Like, I shouldn't have left that party. I should have gone to that party, but I didn't because I was scared. Erasing these memories of Clementine is not just about erasing the memories of Clementine. It's erasing the pain of who you are as a person sometimes.
Dan, that was a goddamn deep speech you just gave.
Thank you. I'll leave now.
Mic drop right there.
This is where Rocco would hit the applause button.
That was good. I didn't think about it like that, but I am myself a little bit of an introvert. I'm not a big fan of big crowds or gatherings with people I don't know, stuff like that. So do you think that there is a part of Joel that is upset with the removal of the extrovert part of his relationship with her? Like, maybe not so much herself, but just what she was able to get him to do. I mean, she gives this big speech of like, don't put your shit on me. But to some extent, when you're in a relationship with somebody for 2 years, she kind of had to have pulled him out of his hole at least a little bit. Yeah. So do you think there's some fear there that he, without her, is going to wind up back in that hole?
Yes. That's a fine point, because that's what character development is. It happens in movies and it happens in real life. You're not the same person you were 2 years ago after dating someone, good or bad.
Right.
You learn things from those mistakes, and hopefully you become a better person. And I think you're right. He's regretting that. Once I lose all these memories, I learn how to get over some of my fears.
Right. Wow, that was deep. All right, question number 3, and the returning question: what is the most important sequence in the movie?
So many sequences that are important, but I do think it's on the ice. Kate Winslet, Clementine, bolts straight up and goes, "This ain't right. I've got to get out of here. I've got to do something." When Noah, what's his name? I would say Noah Wiley. Wow, that's an old reference.
Elijah Wood's character,
Patrick says that line. Wow, she just goes, something's not right here. I got to move on. I'd really have to think about that more. To be honest with you, I didn't think you were doing that question anymore.
Yeah, we brought it back. It's considered a pretty important question. It's like, it's like Delta variant. It just comes back around, and can never get rid of it.
Can't help it.
I will say, from my opinion, the most important sequence has got to be the reveal that Mary gets from the doctor, which is crazy. I mean, this goes back to my whole comment about Jim and Kate not being the stars of the movie, because realistically, if Mary doesn't find out that she was brainwashed, from the doctor, if her memory wasn't erased, she doesn't give out the files, and these two just carry on with relationship 2.0 without any knowledge of what happened previously. Let me ask you this question. Ooh, I got a good one. True. You're the friend. You're David Cross. You're Rob, and you see these two assholes together again, knowing they both got their memories erased. Do you say something? Do you let it happen?
Great question. Full disclosure, David Cross is my hands down all-time favorite stand-up comedian.
He's your spirit animal. I can see it.
So anything he's in, I'm immediately grinning. And I grew up idolizing Jim Carrey. So like for these two to be in the same film is bizarre to me. Do I, in his shoes, tell my buddy what the fuck is going on? And I gotta be honest. Yeah, I think I do. I think it's, to be honest, I think it's a little reckless as a plot line. And I know that you're supposed to suspend a certain amount of judgment. Realistically speaking, you can't just erase one person in the relationship. The other person's going to end up being like, why the fuck are you ignoring me? Right. Hello, there's going to be cops involved. Right. It's going to be messy. You know, imagine if Jim's character, Joel, imagine if he wasn't such a pushover.
Yeah, could you imagine?
Screaming. He would have been throwing books all over that library.
So you're getting 20 years. This is your third charge for domestic abuse. Like,
right.
What, third? Like, what? Could have been arrested before.
So I think it is important that I think the whole company should have told him. I think they said, hey, she erased you. You can't go near her, dude.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He paid a lot of money.
They send the cards out to everybody but him. Like his friend has to tell him, like Clementine did this, which, like you said, he's got to be on the list of people you're notifying.
Right. But of course, for the movie to work.
Yeah, we'll suspend that. Okay, so that's it. That's the 3 questions. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being horrible and 10 being a masterpiece, what rating do you give this movie?
8.5.
8.5. Wow, that's pretty high.
Yeah, I would have said 9, but you know, masterpiece is masterpiece. I think as a whole, I think a lot of people might struggle with this movie. You know, for me personally, I loved it. But because it is so fucking dark and sad, you can't watch it all the time. You know? So that's going to take some points. And like I said, there's some logistical issues that bother me about that. It's a beautiful concept, but realistically, it's not going to work. I mean, the science behind the whole erasing someone's brain memory, to this day, memory and brain scientists will tell you that they don't exactly know where memory is stored in the brain. Right. It's kind of all over the place. So that's hard to say.
You just take a hammer and just tap around.
Yeah. And again, those things of like, this is obviously some sort of proprietal science. This company, this doctor is the only one doing it. So it's clearly in its infancy, right? And yet these people are dancing on his fucking bed.
I do love that they don't go into much detail. Like, you get the sense that this company is essentially like 5 people, and that it's not major headlines. In fact, nobody really even knows about the company until Clementine gets the procedure done. Right. And I would think something like this is going to be all over the news and
exactly.
But like you said, there is a certain amount of suspension you get to do in order to appreciate the movie. I will say this, me personally, 7.5. I think this is a very good movie. Definitely worth a watch. It's not a waste of time by any means. It is kind of sad 90% of the movie, but it ends on a positive note. These two guys, or these two, kids, are so in love that they end up finding each other through darkness, and it's a good ending. So 7.5.
All right.
So now on to everybody's game. Guess that tomato. So we got a little bit of a wrench thrown in there because, like you said, if you watch this on Peacock, it does give you the ratings. Do you remember what they were?
So it gave a tomato and it gave a little popcorn symbol. I don't know what the popcorn symbol was.
Okay.
The tomato rating was a 92, but that didn't tell me whether that was critics or viewers.
Okay.
Audience.
So let's continue on then. Let's give this a shot. Do you want to go with the 92, or are you going to make your own guess?
See, now I would assume that the 92 is maybe an average.
Ooh.
I don't know. So I'll say, because it did so well in the theaters and because it was so unique and emo, it was 2004 when people were seeing this. They probably went higher. They probably gave it a 96. And critics probably went lower.
All right. So you're going with a 96. So usually I'll give you the critic score. I'm not going to do that in this case because I don't want to spoil anything.
All right.
I will tell you there's a little bit of a difference between the 3 movies you're going to get. These 3 movies are going to be plus or minus 2 points of the actual audience score of Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. The twist here is the 3 movies you're going to get are in the categories of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here we go. The good. Stanley Kubrick's 1968's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Why is it good? This movie is a complete mindfuck. Have you seen this movie?
No.
But made in 1968. You have to watch the movie at least 17 times before you actually like it. Truth be told, me and a good friend of mine are huge movie buffs, and he had a book that was like the 500 greatest movies to watch. This movie's in there. Stanley Kubrick. I mean, of course, fine. Well, we rented it. We watch it. I'm not kidding you when I tell you the first time I watched this movie, I'm sitting there on this couch. We haven't said a single word for 2 hours, and the credits are rolling. And I turn to him and I'm like, the fuck did we just watch? There is no speaking at all in the first 30 minutes of the movie or in the last like 20 minutes of the movie. It is insane. Stanley Kubrick was on complete acid when he did this movie. If you watch the movie a total of 17 times, it becomes really good.
Okay.
So that's why this movie's the good.
That's why that's the good. Gotcha.
Movie number 2.
I saw Clockwork Orange, or at least most of it, and I had too much anxiety. I didn't like it.
Yeah, he's a fascinating movie career to watch. If you ever get the chance to watch a documentary on Stanley Kubrick, do it because it'll change your view on film.
I'm writing that down.
Write it down. The bad, Robert De Niro's 1988's Midnight Run. Why is it bad? This is a comedy. Let me repeat that. Robert De Niro, 1980s Robert De Niro, is the lead in a comedy where he plays a bounty hunter. Spoiler, Robert De Niro is not at his comedy peak here.
Yeah.
This movie is atrocious, and I don't understand how it's on anybody's. It shows up on so many lists of great movies. It's not a great movie. I recommend not watching it. And movie number 3,
Taxi Driver was pretty good.
Taxi Driver was great. Yeah. It's also really watch Taxi Driver and then watch The Joker right afterwards, because Joaquin Phoenix said he based a lot of his motivation for the Joker on Taxi Driver. Among other movies.
Didn't know. Okay, that makes sense. Wow.
And lastly, the ugly, Jake Gyllenhaal's 2014's Nightcrawler. Why is this ugly? Jake Gyllenhaal lost 30 pounds to play the role. It's dark, it's disturbing, and it makes you question where the line between the news makers and the news reporters really lies. Have you seen Nightcrawler?
No, I have not. All these movies I haven't seen.
It's a very weird movie. Definitely worth a watch. It's strange. It's dark. I would say it's borderline horror movie, to be honest with you, but it's worth a watch.
And so these 3 movies came within plus or minus 2 or 3 points?
2 points. Yep. Plus or minus 2 points.
Of the critic score?
Of the audience score.
Of the audience score. See, that's hard to say. Context is everything here. I'm going to... Well, I mean, because I know it's a 92, but I did say the audience score was probably higher. I'm going to bump it down to a 93.
The correct answer is... 94.
Okay.
It was a 92 and a 94. So the popcorn is the audience score. Oh,
it is.
It is. Yeah.
Wow.
92 is a critic score, which is crazy. I mean, I do want to give a shout out to the critics for finally, after 3 seasons, being within 2 points of the audience score. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Okay.
Critics and audience
like a
alike.
Fandango score or some bullshit. Like, no one watches. Don't get out of here.
Listen, Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, I recommend it. It's a good movie. Dan, great pick, man.
Thank you.
So
hopefully I can make the top 10.
We'll see. That'll come at the end of season 3 on our YouTube channel. Check out for that. Before I let you go into plugging all the amazing things you're doing, it's a firm belief of the owners of Don't Forget a Towel that everybody geeks out on something. While it may not be movies and comic books, maybe it's erasing your exes from your memory or getting your secretary pregnant. So I got to ask you, Dan, what is it you're geeking out on?
You know, last time I said it was the Cowboys. I think now more so I'm geeking out on the science of what's happening in our social, political, and medical worlds. I think, I don't want to get on a soapbox because I know that Rocco's very good at doing that. But we have a limited amount of time here. But wearing a mask is not an infringement on your civil liberties. The vaccine is safe. You already have a ton of vaccines in your body. The vaccine was developed in the fucking 80s. I'm not going to say that people who don't want to get the vaccine or are vaccine hesitant are crazy or are wrong.
No, you can say that. You can say that they're crazy.
But there's cultural reasons sometimes for vaccine hesitancy, and I want to be sensitive to those.
Oh, stop it! You don't want to be sensitive. Here's the annihilation of that argument. Ready?
Yeah.
In one fell swoop. Do you eat McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's?
Yeah. I mean, I do.
Do you care at all about what's in that meat? If you can even call it that, Taco Bell can't legally call their meat ground beef. And yet you go there to the drive-thru. But God forbid you get shot with a vaccine. Are you kidding me right now? These are the same people that are shopping at Walmart at dollar cookie aisle, which don't get me wrong. Listen, I have no issue with that. I have no issue with your personal right to stuff your face at McDonald's, but you can't use that as an argument. I got to make sure I'm putting safe stuff in my body, but only in this one instance, because everything else you shove in your face is like,
I know, but there is historical reference here of African Americans in this country being literally mistreated by the medical community.
Oh, 100%. Listen, I am the first person, especially as prior military, that will sit there and defend your right to question the government, because the government has done some shady effing shit in the past.
Absolutely.
But we're not talking about military leaders that are coming out on the news and saying, take this drug. We're talking about professional doctors across many different aspects, many different practices, religious leaders.
The first 10 people that took it.
Right.
Millions have taken
millions all across the world.
Fine.
It's not even just the American government. This would be a conspiracy on a scale we have never even considered.
To what? Eliminate all of the world's people?
And at what point? 7 years after we take it? 12 years after we take it?
The NBA is afraid of losing games in China.
Right.
Like, you think that they want to eliminate all these people? You're out of your mind. So that's what I'm geeking out about. People say stupid things. I'm around them. I tend to bite my tongue, but just try and give them a little bit of science behind it. Hey, you know what? They just came up with a vaccine. That's what you think, but in reality, scientists were developing it in the 80s, and it's sort of a plug and play type of thing. mRNA or whatever it's called, messenger RNA, mRNA. Sorry. Right. And it was basically there ready to use when this pandemic came out. So I don't care if they say, hey, every 6 months you're gonna have to get a booster. Fine. If it means living a normal life, then fine. I'll take a shot every 6 months.
Yeah, for sure.
I gotta go to the dentist. I gotta go to the dentist every 6 months and get jabbed in the fucking gums.
Right. Yeah, I don't mind a shot. It's fine.
I don't mind a shot. Okay. So that's what I'm doing now.
Well, that's awesome, man. Listen, I appreciate you so much being on the show. Please tell the folks where they can hear your beautiful voice again.
They can hear me and my disgusting counterpart, Rocco, on Critical Mass Podcast, available for download and streaming on any network you can find.
And as always, check out Gutsy Media Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. Dan, thanks so much for being on the show, man. Great movie choice. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Bob.
Take care.
All right.